I'd like to welcome our final guest speaker, Maida Owens, who is director of the Louisiana Division of the Arts Folklife Program for the state. A little bit about Maida while she's working on sharing her screen. She is a fearless traveler. She actually broke her foot atop a Turkish citadel and then had to fly 25 hours to get back home, but it was all worth it. She also loves to try out new dishes to cook and often has non-traditional Thanksgiving dinners, such as an English tea party or Indian, Turkish, African, or Japanese cuisine. But the one that everyone still talks about is the tofu turkey, which did not come out very well. So with that, Maida, it's all yours.
Okay. Well, thanks for including me today. I'm going to be projecting into the future of taking the current situation and then projecting into the future about land loss in Louisiana and how that impacts the traditional cultures of the coast. We've already, Emily did a good job of explaining how what I'm going to say relates to oil spills. And the major tie-in is the plants that are being destroyed. And so many of them have either traditional uses or have symbolic significance to the community. I'm the state folklorist. I'm in the same agency as Chip McGinsey. So with the Folklife Program, I have the mandate is statewide, all traditional cultures, all traditions. And so we zero in on various projects. But more recently, I've really started looking at the land loss. What is the impact of the traditional cultures? And these are the three questions that I'm asking myself now and trying to figure out what kind of strategies might actually help the situation. And I ask, what happens to the coastal cultures as migration increases? Because it's already happening voluntarily. It's certainly not forced. And then I like to ask, what will our grandchildren wish we had done now? Y'all have seen this map. Most of what I'm going to talk about is in the Terrebonne area and then Bayou Lafourche. The first couple of years, I focused in on those parishes because they are the most profoundly impacted by the land loss. But now I'm looking at all the coastal parishes. So what could we be doing now? There are three things that I feel are important. One is to support the coastal cultures and help them pass on traditions. And we're doing that through workshops, which I'll talk about. Secondly, the human dimension issues need to be more directly included in planning. And the cultural voices need to be heard in those conversations. And there are two major voices that need to be heard, is the cultures such as the Pointe-au-Chien Indian tribe that are all along, you know, they need to be included more in the planning. But there's also the cultural communities throughout the state, the cultural workers. There's a very strong arts network in the state. And in addition to the other aspects of the Office of Cultural Development, but we can be part of the solutions. You know, the arts can play a very big part in addressing the issues that we're going to be facing in Louisiana. The third is to help prepare the receiver communities where people are going to be moving to. There has been very little work done on this yet, but there are resources, there are models to look at. Most significantly is the strategies that immigrants use when they descend, you know, end up in a new community, and how to relate them to the long-term residents in these communities. The arts can play, again, the arts can play a big part in that. When people move, they're not going to lose their culture. It may change, but there are things you can do to help the culture remain more intact. Now, culture is passed on through gatherings and education, and this is both informally and formally. But if there is something that is really important to a community or even a family, any kind of group, if their efforts are made with intention, the traditions and the culture are less likely to be lost in these big movements that are population shifts that are coming. So a few years ago, the Louisiana Folklore Society met in Houma, Louisiana, and interacting with a lot of the residents there and the folklorist, anthropologist and such, the idea of the Bayou Culture Collaborative came out. And this was specifically designed to look at the impact of land loss on the state in terms of the culture. So the main thing we're doing is workshops at this point. This is not a lot of money, but we offer funds to help a master pass on a tradition in some way to a group within their community. This is very focused on intra-group community making. So we've done a lot of them, or these are the ones that we've done, and some of them directly relate to the land and some of them don't. But for the Folklife program, it's all community. It's all trying to help so the community identifies what is important to them and what they want to pass on. So I'm going to share some photos real quick on some of them: duck carving, costume making in Houma, Louisiana, cloth doll making, Jessica Brown. The Grand Caillou Dulac Band of wanted to focus on regalia making. And so here is a man making a belt using redfish scales. Now this, again, we meet the community where they are. Some of the people needed basic sewing lessons, so hand and machine sewing was included in that one. Gumbo. You might think that everybody knows gumbo, but not necessarily Indian gumbo. We did support the Pointe-au-Chien Indian tribe in a few ways. The culture camp, Donald Dardar is showing a nutria skin stretched to the children, but they also covered things like dance, drumming, trap making, blowgun making, foodways. And then we also supported that garden that Patty referred to. This was a workshop for the children, well, adults and children, to paint the plants with watercolors. So they had an artist and an ethnobotanist included in that. Palmetto is particularly symbolic and significant to most of the native groups in this area. Janie Luster is one of the masters who's been doing this. Her family's been doing this for many generations. And so she wanted to have intergenerational workshops with an after-school program where the grandparents and the child learn together, so that would reinforce it back at home. She also is the one who reintroduced the Half-Hitch Coil basket to the tribe. It had been lost, and she learned that the Denver Art Museum had these baskets in their collection. And so she worked with the museum staff to figure out how to do this again. And you can see that the Half-Hitch basket was being taught in this workshop also. This is the older type, the type of plate that was being done before Janie did that, introduced the Half-Hitch. It's a coil method with a plate. And then that's Spanish moss, dolls making out, dolls made out of the Spanish moss. The second type of workshop we started doing, we call Sense of Place and Loss. And that's where we want to have, we wanted to offer in-depth days of scientists, culture bearers, artists, policymakers to get together and experience sharing about their work. Each one of them we wanted to focus, include an artist and their work. And we had one in Lafayette in September 2019 that focused on Brandon Ballingee's exhibit with Prosenta Chakrabarti, they're out of LSU, on biodiversity. And this was in direct response to the Deepwater Horizon oil spill. Brandon does a lot of other work on species becoming extinct due to the climate change. But the next one that we had planned was supposed to be scheduled for the first week of the lockdown, so it was canceled. And we changed gears. We thought about what we could be doing with Zoom, and we decided that the deep dive conversations between the scientists and the cultural communities needed to be paused. And now we're focusing on engaging and informing the art network. And so at one of them, we feature an artist at each one. Monique Verdun is a Houma Indian artist. And she wanted to focus on migration. And so she asked, where are you going? Are you staying? Are you receiving? Because again, this was a statewide meeting, and it is a statewide issue. To give you an example of how the arts can help with this type of issue, I want to tell you about Xavier Cortado. He is in South Florida, and he is an artist who has been doing environmental, sometimes called eco artists. We're pointing to environmental issues from, internationally. He's done many of them. But I want to tell you about the Underwater Homeowners Association. To help people in the Miami area understand what the potential of sea level rise can be, homeowners can put one of these paintings in front of their house that tells how high the water level will get potentially. So that's just one example of how artists can engage the public in a different way and get the message out. So where will people move? Louisiana and all the other large river deltas are feeling the effects of sea level rise sooner than other types of coast. Even though there are more and more news articles about displacement of communities due to climate change, much of the general public still hasn't been thinking about this much. Although the past year, I think more and more are. Geographers, on the other hand, have been looking at this issue for quite a while. The graphic you see is from the research of Matthew Hauer at Florida State University. He's done the most research into predicting where people will move from the coast. Using big data, in this case, US tax return address changes, he projects where people will move. It's known that people tend to relocate to be closer to family or jobs. And the changes in our tax return addresses help predict where people will move. You see the 10 states that will lose the most people. After Florida, Texas, New York, and California, and I know with much larger populations than Louisiana, Louisiana is 5th. The most leaving the state will move to Texas, but most Louisianans will relocate within the state. The second graphic shows that Louisiana is 2nd in the net loss of population. So what does all this mean for Louisiana? Louisiana has the highest rate of native-born residents in the country. Terrebonne Parish has the highest rate within Louisiana, and it's also the parish with the most land loss. While many will stay, many will relocate several times because they don't want to move too far from family and friends, and they already have started doing this. The communities where they move are referred to as receiver communities. So communities will lose population, but some will grow and some will grow a lot. And some receiver communities may not be too happy about having all these newcomers descend on them, especially if there are cultural differences. This happened in New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina, but many of those newcomers are from out of state and enthusiastically embrace the local culture. This type of migration has happened throughout history. Another issue that receiver communities don't have is that the receiver communities don't have the physical infrastructure to handle the increase in population. This is especially true for rural communities. Rural people tend to move to other rural communities, so this is likely to be a problem. One of the issues is to help people throughout Louisiana realize that this is a statewide issue and not a coastal issue. Here are 2 resources that if you want to look into this closer, the first one is Matthew Howard's article from that has these 2 graphics in it. He explains everything, and there's data that you can obtain specifically about your state and your area, about where people will be going. And the second is Shirley Loska's book that she published online in January 2020. So it's very current information about Louisiana's situation. The title is Louisiana's Response to Extreme Weather. And one of the chapters really goes into the issues related to preparing rural communities that may get a lot more people. Here's information about the Louisiana Folklore Society, where it's a wonderful forum to exchange information about the traditional cultures. There's a Facebook group for the Bayou Culture Collaborative. And through my website for this State Division of the Arts, we have a page on this project, and you can sign up for emails about what's going on. And for those of you from around the country, there is a really strong network of folklorists in every state. And if this is something you want to look at in your own area, I can help you connect with folklorists in your area, and also the Arts Network. Every state has a state arts agency. You know, that's where I am, and you know, to help connect with the arts. So this is how to contact me if you so choose. And thank you for letting me share.
All right, thank you so much, Maida.